print it out. So I want to be able to follow my PowerPoint. Thank you, George, for clicking on the slides. Appreciate it. Okay, I think I should be able to see fine. Okay, yes, so my name is Alex Nagy. I'm the SoCal organizer with Food and Water Watch. How many of you, this is your first introduction to Save Porter Ranch, me included, and Food and Water Watch? Welcome. It is so good to have new faces here. I look forward to meeting with all of you, talking with all of you. I wanted to give a shout out to Walker Foley. He just stepped out back there, but what we're really interested in today is not only doing the informal health survey that we're passing around, but we're also interested in getting your testimony and getting your stories about your health experiences, because we think that's a really important way to get the message out there is through storytelling. We are human beings, after all. That comes first nature to us. That's how we, pass information and history on. So if you would like to talk to Walker, and he's raising his hand in the back, to share your stories with us, we think we can do some really powerful things with those stories in the future. Let's start with the next slide. Oh, and I just also want to mention, Food and Water Watch is a national organization. We were formed out of Ralph Nader's Public Citizen. We have our main office is in DC, but we have 16 offices across the country. Our model is grassroots organizing, community-based organizing. So even though we have 16 offices across the country, each office looks completely different because we are so embedded in the community. We work with community to basically fight back, right, against corporate influence in our democracy. We believe that our democracy, our elected leaders, should be accountable to the people, not to big corporations. And so we believe that grassroots organizing and advocacy is the real way to fight back against big moneyed interests in politics. And that's what we've seen in working here with Porter Ranch, is going door to door, getting petition signatures, getting in the media has really made the difference and forced our voice into the forefront to be considered and to be heard as part of this conversation. And so we really can influence policy. We just need to be involved to do that. So what is fracking? Sue talked about it, but next slide. Fracking is the process of using millions of gallons of water, thousands of gallons of toxic chemicals, and sand at a really high pressure to blast apart underground shale formations. And we've really seen this boom come recently as of 2005 because this boom has really helped advance sort of natural gas development. But in California, we have some fracking, but it's a lot of different things too. And it differs from conventional drilling because conventional drilling, that's kind of the easy to get sandstone formation oil. You kind of stick a straw into the earth and it comes out. But with fracking, it's harder. The shale rock is a lot more dense, and so you need more extreme techniques really to fracture the earth to get that oil and gas out to flow. Next slide. And what we've seen is that across the country, fracking has led to a whole host of problems. And we're not just talking about the instance, the moment, the fracturing itself. We're really talking about the entire industrial process that goes along with it, that is needed for that one frac job. And we've seen it lead to thousands of cases of water contamination across the country, widespread air pollution like we heard from Jessica. They often flare gas into the air, that methane, which directly has contributed to the acceleration of global warming and climate change, because methane is a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon, and so it's warming the planet at a faster rate. We've also seen fracking lead to property damage. If you've heard about the earthquakes in Oklahoma, or if you've heard about homes falling off of their foundations in Baldwin Hills by the Inglewood oil field, that is a huge concern, and we have seen that across the country. It's also led to a public health crisis. Especially in communities where water is poisoned and you can't drink that water, you can't breathe that air, or you're seeing premature births or all kinds of problems associated with this. It also leads to well blowouts and spills. We know that the oil and gas industry is a very sort of they're not very careful, especially when it comes to their bottom line. We find that they often skirt around safety precautions and what have you, and accidents are bound to happen, and they're uncontrollable and they're unpredictable. Wastewater dumping, we talked about the amount of wastewater that comes out of these wells. When it's injected back into the earth, that's what's been causing earthquakes in Oklahoma, but it's also dumped into rivers, streams, and unlined pits in California. We're going to talk about that. And again, earthquakes. Next slide. So how do regulations protect us? Next slide. They don't. In 2005, you may remember Dick Cheney. He's sort of, I'm not going to go there, but you know him. He was the former CEO of Halliburton, which was the big company that patented a lot of these fracking technologies. And when he was vice president, he was able to get into the energy bill of 2005 an exemption. So fracking is exempt nationwide from the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Air Act. And that is what has led to this huge shroud of mystery around what exactly is happening. That's why communities had no clue that fracking was going on. They had no clue to even look for what chemicals that were being used. There was no disclosure, no monitoring. And so what we've seen is communities across the country are responding by banning it. If you're not going to let us know what's in it, and we're finding out that it's causing all of these problems, you know what? There's no such thing as safe fracking. Let's ban it. And in places like California, where the industry has been able to get ahead kind of that sort of community organizing momentum, they've been able to put in some regulations, but regulations are really just about disclosure. So knowing when it's happening, we should have known that from the beginning, right? Knowing what chemicals are being used, we should have known that from the beginning. So there's nothing really there to protect public health. Next slide. So it should be no surprise, but the Aliso Canyon storage facility, operated by SoCal Gas, is storing fracked gas that is coming from across the western United States. 90% of this facility is importing gas from out of state. The facility itself covers 3,600 acres. And in the 1970s, this was an active oil and gas field, so meaning they were pulling oil out of the field, but they depleted most of it, and in the 70s it turned into a gas storage field. And 45% of the total base load that SoCal Gas brings in from out of state, they have 4 storage facilities. The Aliso Canyon storage facility is by far the biggest. It's one of the 10 largest storage facilities in the country. It's massive, 84 billion cubic feet of gas. 45% of that is what they're storing out of all the gas they bring into the area. And so this is a map of sort of the operations that SoCal Gas is connected to. We're talking about massive pipeline infrastructure. You can see the Rocky Mountain Basin, the West Canada Sedimentary Basin, the San Juan Basin, and the Permian Basin. All of those regions are massive fracking operations, and we bring that fracked gas in from major interstate pipelines into the SoCal Gas operating area. Next slide. And this is a more up-close look at SoCal Gas operations. The black triangles are storage fields. The white triangles are compressor stations. So compressor stations are basically what moves gas through pipelines. And in these interconnecting areas, that's where pipelines are interconnecting. And so you can really see, we have 3 storage facilities operated by SoCal Gas in LA County, and the other is in Goleta and Santa Barbara County. So it's Honor Rancho, Aliso, and Playa del Rey. Next slide. And so this is a photo that Matt and Kyoko took on a hike. We can do one of those hikes again, so you can check out the facilities for yourself. But this is what the wells look like when they're building them and constructing them to store natural gas into the earth. So it's very much like the oil and gas wells they use to produce them, and oftentimes they're the same wells. That's what happened with the gas leak. These wells are so old, and what we've seen is that the cement casing has a 50% failure rate because it's cement over the 30-year period. And so that's what happened with the gas leak, and that's why the leak is happening, because the cement casing failed, which is typical. This is very common, especially with old facilities, which this is. Next slide. And so you may be aware that the Aliso Canyon storage facility is currently undergoing some construction. They are basically upgrading the facility. One of the main parts of it is the turbine stations, which again is like generating power to push the gas into the earth. That was formerly diesel run. They're upgrading those facilities to be more electricity run, so it's not so bad on emissions when it comes to burning diesel. But what they kind of failed to mention in a lot of their press materials, which I thought was really interesting, is that this upgrading of this facility, in addition to increased power lines, in addition to moving the gate and the office and all that kind of stuff that you can see, they're increasing their storage capacity by about a third. So they're going from being able to inject 300 million cubic feet of gas per day to, by the time they're done with it, 450 million cubic feet of gas per day. Next slide. Yes?
Just wanted to add to that. This project is also extending the life of the field for another 40 years. And when you think about that figure you just gave, of 50% failure after 30 years, and we're going to take these 60-year-old wells and extend them to 100 years, we're going to have a lot more of these failures.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. So how do we fit into this? I mean, if you live in Porter Ranch, you're in the city of Los Angeles, you are a LA DWP customer. DWP contracts with the SoCal Gas Company to provide gas. Thanks. Very cool. And LA DWP operates 4 in-basin natural gas plants. And so basically, when you're turning on the lights at home, 20% likely chance that that electricity is being generated from a natural gas plant that got gas from SoCal Gas. That's